Today we are out here taking a look at the very sexy and quite expensive BMW i8. Top things to know are that this is a plug-in hybrid. That means this is not a pure EV like we see in the Tesla or even a pure EV like we see in the BMW i3. It should be obvious from this angle that the i8 is a low-slung two-door coupe. It's actually a four-seater, however. You will find two very small rear seats behind these rear windows. One thing that may surprise you, however, is that for a supercar like this, we actually have a reasonable amount of ground clearance. It's right around 4.6 inches. That means that this is the kind of car that you can drive daily and you won't be scraping it on speed bumps or road humps or your average parking lot approach. When you take a look at the rear end, you can really see what's going on with this cutout in the body right here. This is styled somewhat like the rest of the BMW lineup, but it has some very distinct style of its own. The engine situation takes a bit of explanation because this does use two different electric motors, a traditional 6-speed automatic transaxle, and a 1.5-liter 3-cylinder turbocharged engine. You'll find one of the electric motors right here under the hood. It produces 129 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque. You'll find the other motor right back here where the engine lies. The engine alone produces 228 horsepower, and it is mated to an 11 horsepower electric motor and a traditional 6-speed automatic. Interestingly enough, this car actually has two different transmissions because the motor up front is mated to a 2-speed automatic transmission. When everything is merged together with a 7.1 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack, the power total comes in at 357 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. Now, the way fuel economy is calculated on plug-in hybrids is honestly a little bit wacky. The MPGe figure is 76, and once your battery is depleted, you'll be averaging around 28 miles per gallon. You may have already seen one of the cool styling features on the i8, and that would be these scissor lift doors. They don't hinge right here on the top of the vehicle, they actually hinge right up there by the A-pillar. That means it is a little bit tricky to get in and out of the car compared to a traditional door because you can end up bopping your head right here on the door. You'd have to kind of swing yourself in that fashion. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Now, it may sound crazy, but the i8 does have a very tiny back seat. So if I go ahead and unhook the seatbelt there, we'll see how easy it is to get in the back. Now, this doesn't have a traditional release for the front seat like many convertibles do. So we actually have to power this front seat forward manually there with that button on the side. And then hopefully we can put the seat back into position. Now, these rear seats are a little bit more comfortable than certain Porsche models, but that's not necessarily saying much. In general, you should consider these rear seats to be very nicely padded luggage compartments for your computer bag or other things that you're going to put inside the vehicle because we don't have a terribly large trunk in the back. Calling the i8's interior heavily styled might be an understatement. We have these very stylized headrests right there that are not adjustable, relatively standard and comfortable BMW seats. The front doors all use leather wrapping on pretty much every surface, but we have that interesting blue striping going on right there as well. And that continues along the dashboard, so we get that same light up blue strip right over here on the left side of the driver and one over here on the right. Now, if you do choose this blue color, it does tend to be a little bit dazzling at night. We have a pretty standard iDrive system right up there on the dashboard, very similar to every other BMW model, although we do get a few EV-specific features. We have our preset buttons and volume knob right there, dual zone climate control, our start-stop button, just press our foot on the brake and start it right like that. Typical BMW shifter right over here. To the left of the shifter is where we start finding our drive mode buttons. We get our eDrive, that's basically EV only, Comfort, Eco Pro, and if you want Sport, just click it down to drive and hit it over to the left for the Sport mode. Press that button for park. Now down here we find our buttons for our camera systems and our iDrive controller. This is also where you'll find the first of two storage cubbies. This one has the USB port in it. It is quite small. It wasn't able to stick a phone in there. Single cup holder right there. Larger compartment where you can put a wallet. This is also where you'll find the dock for iDrive devices, as well as a 12-volt power outlet. And behind that, we have two larger cup holders. On the driver's side, we do have a full LCD instrument cluster, but this is not as adjustable as things like Cadillac Q. It basically just changes colors and changes to a tachometer in the sport mode. Backing up, we have a steering wheel that's styled very similarly to the BMW M product line. We have aggressive sport grips right at top and that bump out in the trim. Then we have buttons for our cruise control on the left and our media system on the right. Before we go out on the road, let's talk about tires, because you'll notice these are not terribly wide-looking tires. These are actually 215/45 R20s. This is just about the same width tire that you'll see on many mass-market mid-size sedans like a Honda Accord or a Kia Optima. The relatively narrow tires are made possible by the lightweight carbon fiber construction that we see in this model just like we see the narrow tires in the BMW i3. However, keep in mind this is just about as heavy as your average mass-market mid-sized 4-cylinder sedan. Because we have the gasoline engine in the rear producing more power on the rear axle than we get from the electric motor up there on the front axle, we do have wider tires in the back. These are 245 width tires. Now, acceleration is pretty rapid in the i8, but it depends on the mode that you're in, and it averages between 3.9 seconds and 9.5 seconds depending on the mode that you're in. If you're in pure EV mode, you've charged the battery all the way, you put this eDrive button engaged on the dashboard right here, you'll run 0 to 60 in 9.5 seconds as long as you don't press the accelerator pedal all the way down, which will cause the hybrid system to engage. Now, if the hybrid system engages, 0 to 60 very repeatably will run between 4.3 and 4.7 seconds, depending on whether or not sport mode is engaged. Lastly, if you want the fastest acceleration time, you're going to have to use launch control, and that will take you from 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Now, the hybrid design of the i8 is very important to understand because the hybrid system adds weight to this vehicle. It weighs about the same as your average 4-cylinder Honda Accord. And the mission of this vehicle was to give you good acceleration and excellent fuel economy. That twist means that BMW had to put relatively narrow tires on the front of this vehicle. They're actually 215 with tires up front, which is about the same as you'll find in your average Honda Accord. Now, that means that we do get relatively longer braking distances than we find in some of the other vehicles out there because the front tires are doing the majority of the braking in this vehicle. We still get that excellent acceleration time made possible by the wide tires out back because the rear tires are doing the majority of the acceleration. Actual 60 to 0 times ended up at around 120 feet, which is definitely longer than something like an Alfa Romeo 4C or your average Corvette. The tire selection also affects the handling on this vehicle. Now, this does handle very well, and I think it has an excellent, well-balanced feel to it, but the front tires definitely start giving up the grip way before the rear tires do. Now, because of the weight distribution in the i8, when it starts giving up grip, it does so in a very, very predictable fashion, so it makes it very easy to drive. The ride in the i8 is relatively firm, but it stops just before punishing, so that means this is the kind of car that you probably could live with on a daily basis. The cabin is also very quiet, much quieter than a lot of those other performance cars out there, quieter than the Corvette, quieter than the Alfa 4C. But the fuel economy really is where this vehicle shines. We've been averaging 32 miles per gallon even while driving this car fairly hard, and that is absolutely incredible for any kind of performance vehicle. In addition, this vehicle's drive modes are also very well polished. We have eDrive, which is the electric EV only mode for this vehicle. That means we have essentially a front-wheel drive supercar. We also have Comfort and EcoPro, which are the standard drive modes in this car. Comfort gives you a slightly more aggressive throttle tip-in on the vehicle, while EcoPro dulls things up a little bit, and it also enables the maximum regenerative braking. Now, even though the throttle is a little duller, I like the maximum regen braking in this vehicle, so I've actually left it in EcoPro most of the time. If we put this vehicle over into sport mode, it gives us a tachometer on the dashboard and basically makes sure that the engine is running most of the time. So when we engage sport mode, it's going to cause the engine in the back to rev up, hold those gears a little bit longer, but also charge the battery. And it'll actually charge the battery up to around 75 or 80%. The reason it does that is to make sure that you have all that 357 horsepower available as often as possible, because if you're really flinging this car hard out there on the track, you're going to need that extra oomph. When it comes to comparisons, there really aren't any valid comparisons out there for the i8. Of course, we do have the Porsche 918 Spyder, but it is $700,000 more than the BMW i8. We also have the upcoming Acura NSX, but at an expected $170,000 plus, it is still decently more expensive than the model we're taking a look at here. Of course, both of those other vehicles will go definitely faster 0 to 60, and they will handle better than the i8, but they're not really the same kind of thing. The Porsche is a little bit closer than this, but the Acura definitely is a little different because it's not a plug-in hybrid, it's just a regular hybrid. For some reason, a lot of people want to compare the i8 to the Tesla Model S, and I really don't understand why. They're not the same kind of vehicle at all. This has one main seating area for a driver and a front passenger and two itty-bitty back seats for emergency passengers. The Tesla Model S can seat up to 7 people, 5 people in relative comfort, and 2 little people in the back in the optional third row. Definitely not going on in this vehicle. The i8's also a plug-in hybrid and the other one's an EV, so it's not the same kind of thing at all there. This will definitely go faster from Seattle to Los Angeles because you'll be able to fill it up at a regular gas station, although certain versions of the Tesla, if you pay enough, will go faster 0 to 60. My bottom line is that if I had $170,000 just hanging out, I would definitely buy this over the Acura NSX. I think I like the looks of this car a little bit better than the NSX. I kind of enjoy the quirk of the plug-in hybrid as well. It's also a little bit less expensive, so you can get another car for daily driving. If for some reason I had $900,000 hanging out, I would definitely buy this and a Rolls-Royce before I bought that Porsche Spyder. Now the Porsche is undeniably sexy, it's undeniably exciting. I don't think it's that much more exciting than this, however, in the looks department. Obviously, it's more exciting out on the road. It's also going to cost you more to insure, a little bit more to operate and maintain as well, and a whole lot more to buy. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, thetruthaboutcars.com. Go ahead and click that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen and find us over at TTAC.com. I'll see you next week.